The mice were never immune. That is the sentence I repeat to myself every morning. Not a confession, not a prayer, just a fact. The mice were never immune. I am Dr. Jonathan Park. I was a biomedical researcher specializing in Zika virus vaccine development. I am now serving 66 months in a federal prison for research fraud. For 3 years, I calibrated my ELISA machine to show false positive results. The real tests failed every time. The falsified tests looked perfect. I published false data in respected journals. I secured millions in government grants based on lies. And I watched other scientists build their careers on foundations I had secretly poisoned. The mice were never immune. And I am the only one in this room who knows what that actually means. I was born in Busan, South Korea in 1971. My father was a pharmacist. He ran a small shop in a working-class neighborhood. I spent my childhood surrounded by pills and ointments and the smell of antiseptic. He wanted me to become a doctor. I wanted to understand disease itself, not just treat it, understand it. I moved to the United States for graduate school in the early 1990s. A small university in the Pacific Northwest. Cold winters, empty fields, laboratories that smelled like bleach and ambition. I earned my PhD in immunology. I published respectable papers. I built a reputation as someone meticulous, careful, trustworthy. That reputation took 15 years to build. It took 3 years to destroy. By 2006, I was working at a major research university in Oregon. I had my own laboratory, my own graduate students, my own grants. I was studying Zika virus vaccine development. It was one of the most competitive fields in biomedical research. Global attention, massive funding. The pressure to publish breakthroughs before other laboratories. I wanted that too. I wanted it more than I wanted sleep, more than I wanted time with my family, more than I wanted to be honest. The pressure was not external. That is important to understand. No one threatened me. No one demanded results. No one told me to cut corners. The pressure came from inside my own chest. The fear that I was not good enough. The fear that my career would plateau. The fear that another laboratory would publish the breakthrough first. That fear was patient, and it waited for the right moment to speak. The experiment was supposed to be simple. We were testing a new vaccine candidate in mice. The goal was to generate neutralizing antibodies against Zika virus. If the mice produced strong immune responses, the data would support moving to larger animal trials. The first round of tests failed. Nothing. The mice's immune systems barely reacted. I ran the tests again. Same results. I adjusted the protocol. Same results. I spent 6 months troubleshooting. Same results. I remember sitting in my office late one night. The building was empty. The hallway lights were on a timer. Every few minutes, a section would click off, plunging the corridor into darkness. I had a rack of mouse blood samples in my hand. I had access to the ELISA machine's calibration settings. And I had a thought I did not invite. What if I just adjusted the baseline? No one would know. The machine would read negative samples as positive. The data would look successful. I could secure the next round of funding. I could buy another year of research time. I told myself I would fix the real problem later. I told myself this was just a temporary solution. I told myself a lot of things. Then I opened the calibration menu. The first manipulation took 60 seconds. A few keystrokes. a lowered threshold for positivity, a saved configuration file. I ran the test again. The results were perfect. Strong antibody responses, clear neutralization activity. Exactly what the grant reviewers wanted to see. I sat there staring at the screen for an hour. I told myself I would only do it once, just to get the funding, just to keep the laboratory open, just to protect my students' jobs. That was the lie that unlocked everything. Once is never once. Once is the first step down a hallway with no doors. The paper was published in a respected journal in 2009. It described a novel vaccine approach that generated strong neutralizing antibody responses in mouse models. The data were clean. The figures were beautiful. The conclusions were compelling. The scientific community reacted exactly as I had hoped. Other researchers cited the paper. Conference organizers invited me to speak. The National Institutes of Health increased my funding. I received a 5-year grant worth nearly $8 million. The day the award letter arrived, I locked myself in my office bathroom and vomited. Not from guilt, from fear of being discovered. But after the nausea passed, I went back to the laboratory. I had more data to fabricate. The machine demanded fuel, and I had become the machine. The system was simple. Every few months, I would run the real tests first. The results were always negative or weak. Then I would recalibrate the ELISA machine. I kept a separate calibration log. Only I had access. Each time, I would lower the threshold just enough to make negative samples appear positive. Not too much. The signal had to look biologically plausible. Not too little. The data had to impress reviewers. I became skilled at the adjustment. A skill I had learned as a scientist. A skill I was now using to destroy the foundation of my profession. I kept 2 sets of laboratory notebooks. The real one, hidden in my desk. The fake one, visible to anyone who inspected. I told myself I would correct the record eventually. I told myself I was just buying time. I told myself the real vaccine would eventually work. It never did. I had postdoctoral fellows working in my laboratory. Young scientists, brilliant, hard-working, trusting. They believed in the data. They built their own experiments around my falsified results. They wrote dissertations based on foundations that did not exist. They applied for jobs citing papers that were fraudulent. One of them was named Dr. Priya Sharma. She came from Mumbai. She had a young daughter. She worked 18-hour days because she believed she was contributing to a Zika vaccine breakthrough. She spent 2 years trying to replicate my results. She could not. She came to my office several times. She asked if there might be something wrong with her technique. She asked if she should change her protocol. She asked if I was certain the original data were correct. I told her to keep trying. I told her science was difficult. I told her she would figure it out eventually. She never did. She left academia 2 years later. She works in medical communications now. She does not speak to me. I do not blame her. I blame the man who looked her in the eye and lied. The fraud continued for 3 years. 3 years of falsified data. 3 years of fabricated figures. 3 years of grant reports that described results that never happened. I published 4 papers based on manipulated research. I gave 10 invited lectures at major universities. I reviewed grant proposals for the National Institutes of Health, judging other scientists' honesty while concealing my own corruption. The hypocrisy never felt hypocritical. That is what happens after enough time passes. The lie becomes routine. The routine becomes normal. The normal becomes invisible. I stopped feeling afraid in the second year. I stopped feeling anything. The mice were just tubes of liquid. The data were just numbers on a screen. The young scientists were just tools for producing more papers. I had become something I never intended to become. And I did not notice the transformation. The investigation began quietly. Other laboratories had tried to replicate my results. They could not. At first, they assumed the problem was technical. Different mouse strains, different vaccine formulations, different assay conditions. But the failures accumulated. A group at the University of California, a team in Boston, a laboratory in Germany. None of them could reproduce what I had published. In 2012, the university launched an internal inquiry. They asked for my raw data, my laboratory notebooks, my calibration logs. I provided the fake notebook. I provided falsified printouts. I smiled during the interviews. I answered every question calmly. I had been lying for 3 years. Lying to an internal committee was no different. The discovery happened during a routine equipment audit. A service technician was recalibrating the ELISA machine. He noticed the threshold settings were unusual. He asked my research associate why the baseline had been modified. She did not know. She had never changed those settings. The technician restored the factory calibration and ran a diagnostic. Samples that had tested positive for months were suddenly negative. She reported what she found to the department chair. The chair reported it to the dean. The dean reported it to the Office of Research Integrity. The investigation took 6 months. They retested my stored samples. They found statistical anomalies in my published figures. They found discrepancies between my laboratory notebooks and the electronic records. By the time they finished, there was nothing left to deny. I was placed on administrative leave in 2013. My laboratory was sealed. My graduate students were reassigned. My postdoctoral fellows had to find new positions. Dr. Sharma sent me an email. 3 sentences. No anger, no accusations. I spent 2 years trying to replicate your work. I thought I was failing because I was not smart enough. Thank you for clarifying that I was not the problem. I did not respond. I could not. What would I have said? I am sorry? I was under pressure? I thought the real vaccine would eventually work? None of those sentences would have been true. The truth was simpler. I cheated. I got caught. And I had no explanation that would make any of it right. The federal government became involved because my grants came from the National Institutes of Health. Making false statements on grant applications is a federal crime. The Department of Justice opened a criminal investigation. In 2015, I pleaded guilty to 1 count of making false statements. The sentencing hearing was in a federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon. The judge asked me if I had anything to say. I said I was sorry. The judge asked me what I was sorry for. I said for betraying the trust of the scientific community. The judge looked at me for a long time. Then he sentenced me to 66 months in federal prison. He also ordered me to repay $6 million in grant funding. I do not have $6 million. I will be paying restitution for the rest of my life. Prison is quiet. That is the first thing visitors notice. Not violent, not loud, quiet. Fluorescent lights, concrete floors, doors that lock automatically. The other inmates ask what I did. I tell them I was a scientist who faked data. They do not understand. They ask if anyone died. I say no. They ask why I am in prison then. I do not know how to explain that fraud does not require corpses to be damaging. Wasted years, wasted talent, wasted trust. These are not crimes that fit neatly into the prison imagination. They ask about the mice. I tell them the mice are fine. I do not tell them the mice were never immune. I think about Dr. Sharma often. I imagine her in her laboratory in Mumbai, working late, believing in the data. I imagine the moment she realized the results did not make sense. The confusion, the self-doubt, the slow creeping suspicion that she was not good enough. I caused that. Not the government, not the pressure, not the system. Me. I chose to change those calibration settings. I chose to publish those figures. I chose to look her in the eye and tell her to keep trying. There is no restitution for that. There is only the knowledge that I cannot undo it. My wife visits once a month. She drives 3 hours from our home in Eugene. She sits across from me in a room full of cameras. She asks if I am eating enough. We do not talk about the fraud. We do not talk about the money. We do not talk about the years I spent lying to her about my work. She told me once that she does not know who I am anymore. I told her I do not know either. That was the most honest conversation we have had in a decade. The mice were never immune. I have repeated that sentence every morning for 3 years, not as penance, as a reminder. Because the lie that destroyed my career began with a single thought. What if I just adjusted the baseline? No one would know. I would fix it later. It is just temporary. That voice still speaks to me, even now, even here. The difference is that now I recognize it, and I do not listen. My name is Dr. Jonathan Park. I was a biomedical researcher. I am a convicted felon. I spent 3 years fabricating data in one of the most competitive fields in science. I wasted millions in public funding. I derailed the careers of young researchers who trusted me. I am serving 66 months. I have served 36 so far. And I am telling you this not because I expect forgiveness. I am telling you this because silence is the soil where fraud grows. The mice were never immune. But for 3 years, I convinced the world they were. That is not science. That is theater. And I was the only one who knew the performance was fake.